Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the New World. No, actually, this isn't the New World. This is Siberia for the second commentary in a row, and don't you just love the Asian dynasties? It really messes with you, and allows some really strange matchups to happen. For example, it is possible to have Iroquois versus the Sioux in the middle of Mongolia if you really wanted to, and I've always found that rather amusing. But today we have neither of those civilizations. This is Umeu here in the north of the map, in the color blue, as you can see, playing as the Dutch. Now, the Dutch, fairly interesting civilization, and I think this is why they are up there on that poll that I made the other day. And for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, well, basically I made a video a couple of days ago which had a poll in it where I asked you guys to vote on a civilization for me to play in ranked. I want to climb my way through the power rating ladder, and I'm going to do it with the civilization that gets the most votes. And for a while, Dutch was definitely first. It was, you know, the most popular civilization, but since then the vote has changed, and I would encourage you all to go and vote in that poll if you haven't done so already, because yeah, I'm going to make videos about the civilization that wins, so, you know, there's your motivation to vote. It's going to be my own gameplay, of course, first-person commentary, but here we see Umeu building a trading post, which is rather unusual for Dutch players. They often like to save their wood and, of course, build a bank with it in the, well, first of all, they'll collect all the food they need to age up. As you can see here, this player is not collecting any more coin. He's got all the coin he wants for his settlers, and has put all of his settlers now onto food, going to age up. But building that trading post is going to slow him down. He needed to collect a bit of extra wood for that, I would have imagined, and that's going to slow him down to colonial age. And also, you know, a lot of Dutch players would like to save their wood for their banks, which was what I was trying to get at in the first place. But actually, Umeu discovered 40 wood and another 40 wood there. So he found 80 wood. He would have had 100 wood on the floor, I would have imagined. So he only needed to collect 20 wood for this trading post. Okay, I see why he's built it now. At the same time, you could save that wood you found for a bank, but then you've got this this awkward trade-off where, you know, you found these useful treasures, but they're not going to be used. Found 50 wood there, really nice with the treasure finds. Actually, he's found plenty of wood this game. Yeah, and if he kept all of this wood, then he could build a bank with it. But it's kind of awkward knowing you've got this useful resource that you can't spend for another couple of minutes. So maybe he felt, I need to spend these resources now to make use of it. And the trading post, I think, early on like that was actually not a bad idea. Of course, Dutch players do like to build banks, and I think banks would be better for him. But considering he had the wood so early on, this is kind of nice too, and the extra XP from that is certainly going to help him out in the Fortress Age, and that is where a lot of Dutch players will take the game to a lot of the time, since, well, they're colonials not to be underestimated, but they do have a fairly nice economy, and their Fortress Age unit combinations, I think, make them stronger. They are a stronger civilization in the Fortress Age overall, I would say here. Finding a pirate map showing them the location of all the treasures, and that is quite a nice treasure, especially in a team game where there are actually more treasures to be found, and your ally also gets the line of sight here, but that's not relevant. Oh, he's going to find Duba! There he is, everybody! Duba the pet monkey! Anyway, let's switch over to his opponent, Maltk, in the south of the map. I hope I'm pronouncing this name correctly. He's in the colour red, playing as the French, and the French are definitely up there in that poll that I made. I believe when I last checked before I made this commentary, they're actually leading the poll. They're winning, which I found rather unusual because, you know, Dutch, let's switch over to Umeu here. He is aging up right now, of course, going with the quartermaster politician. Has all of the food he needs for a bank and is collecting the wood for a bank as well right now, and I'm sure that that is what he's going to lay down. But the Dutch, yeah, they have some interesting mechanics. Their settlers cost coin, you know, it's different, like... Yeah, and they have banks, which are buildings that generate coin. You've got some interesting stuff going on for Dutch, and the playstyle is quite nice, with the whole playing really defensive in the colonial and trying to get to fortress, and sometimes struggling to do so. But, you know, interesting stuff. Whereas France, they're winning the poll. Drum roll, please. Their unique civilization bonus is... their settlers have different names. Such wow. Much difference. But, okay, I mean, it's not just that. They are more expensive settlers, they do gather faster, and actually they do train faster relative to the speed at which they collect resources compared to another, well, just regular European settler. So it is an interesting game mechanic in itself, but I'd say France is one of the... If somebody asked, you know, just start an Age of Empires 3, and they're like, yeah, what civilization should I play? You know, I've played AOC, played a bit of, you know, Age of Empires 2, I'm pretty good at that. What civilization do you think I should start off with? Well, I'd start them off with France, because it's most like... It's just the civilization that is most like any other... It's just a generic civilization that's like any other civilization in any other Age of Empires game, almost. It's not really true because of shipments and stuff like that, but you know what I'm saying here. But let's jump into this game. Here we see Moltke going for this treasure, the Shield of El Polo, which is an interesting one, because it's not usually that useful, those hit points. But, of course, you do get the XP from killing the Guardians. But more importantly, let's talk about what he might be up to in, of course, the Colonial Age. He is now here. His first home city shipment is 700 wood, as you can see there. He used the 400 wood, which he aged up with, clearly on this stable here, so always adding in a barracks as well. So he used the 400 wood on a barracks in a stable. He collected some wood, of course, during the transition to the Colonial Age for the steel traps upgrade, and he has that as well as the hunting dog, so 30% extra to food gathering here, and also that 75 food upgrade that gives you some settler hit points. So, you know, playing what is looking to be a fairly standard Colonial Age agenda here, of course now adding in some houses since that 700 wood has arrived, and he's playing against the Dutch, and the Dutch are usually, unless you're playing against Azamp, #cowhacks, a very defensive civilization. So this French player, Moltke, by the way, who is allegedly Darwin Giovanni, if I didn't mention that. This guy, Darwin Giovanni, by the way, is possibly the best player in Age of Empires 3 with the Russian civilization. I think that is a comment I can make with confidence. I think there are other players who are good with Russia as well, but Darwin is just known for being good with Russia. Here he's playing as France, and he's also known for not being that good with other civilizations. So we'll see how true that is. I think he's a fairly well-rounded player, like, well, you'd have to be at the rank he is. But, yeah, but definitely better with Russia and more well-known for playing with Russia. But, yes, he's playing as France, and he knows that he's up against the Dutch, who are usually quite defensive in the Colonial Age. And sorry, I missed a bit of action there, but clearly you can see all of his 5 Hussars are full HP. So I think what happened is he saw Blue's Hussars and decided to get out of there. But since the Dutch are defensive, you can use, if you're going for a Colonial French build where you're going to be building both barracks and a stable. Of course, here he can make musketeers if he chooses to, or he can make full cavalry if he chooses to, or mix them both in, since, of course, well, a batch of 5 hussars would cost 1,000 resources, a batch of 10 musketeers would cost 1,000 resources. But since Dutch are a defensive civ, as I'm trying to say, you have the opportunity to go 5 hussars first and perhaps do a little bit of raiding. But before we talk about the rest of this French build and whether or not I think it's going to be good against what the Dutch player is doing, let's actually see what the Dutch player is doing. Here we have Umeu. And so far, let's take a look at the shipments he's sent. He's sent 700 wood, and he has sent the bank wagon there. Of course, 3 settlers in the Discovery Age, which we don't need to really worry about. And 700 wood and a bank. Those two would have been the first shipments. I'm not sure which was actually the first, but those two would have been the first 2. And as you can see here, he's managed to put some banks up with that wood and the bank wagon. And with the rest of that wood from, of course, the shipment, I imagine he's built his stable and a barracks, as you can see here. And actually, he's just researched his hunting dogs upgrade as well. So putting that wood to use. A lot of cavalry here from Moltke. It looks like a very full colonial. Coming in, trying to get some more raiding done. But as you can see, Umeu's hunts are really nicely placed behind his TC. He's going to be very difficult here. And actually, Moltke has found himself, or shall I just call him Darwin? We'll just call him Darwin. He's found himself that some of his cavalry are now in hand combat, and he might not be able to escape. Fortunately, though, Umeu not going to pursue that. I think, I don't know if he saw these musketeers here, but certainly more units arriving. I think this amount of cavalry and those musketeers could quite easily take on what Blue has here. I mean, yes, pikemen are good against cavalry, but in a one-on-one fight, a hussar will beat a pikeman, and I don't really think Umeu wants to be wasting his pikemen like that. Alright, so we missed a couple of seconds there because my recorder decided to crash. There was not enough space on my hard drive to save all of the, well, to save any more video files, so I fixed all that now. Let's resume! I believe I was talking about what the Dutch player has done, and yeah, we'll just recap. We see 3 banks, and a stable, and a barracks. He sent 700 wood and a bank wagon to achieve that, and he sent 8 pikemen, and 600 wood has just arrived. So, I imagine with that wood, we'll see the last bank added in, and maybe he'll build some more houses. Here going for 475 food there, and why wouldn't you if you've got the army to do so, just hanging around? And of course that French player isn't applying any aggression at the moment. Let's just quickly switch over to him here. Very, very full colonial here, and sending 8 crossbowmen. Looks like he's just going to go for that critical mass and then push in, and we'll talk about what I think about this in a moment. Let's finish off with the Dutch player. We need to analyse his point in the game. I haven't spent very much time with this guy here. Oh, look, the settler coming in to get the treasure, but he hasn't actually killed the last guardian. But, yeah, that food definitely... he'd be aging up right now, because the settler would have collected it up. And he'd have all the food he needs for the age up. But, yeah, he's... those 2 resource shipments, 700 wood, 600 wood, and the bank wagon, given this Dutch player a fairly nice economy, and it looks like he's going to be able to get up to the Fortress Age fairly comfortably. I think he's going to be absolutely fine here, because the French player... I think due to the fact that he's having that colonial agenda, really needs to put on a bit more pressure to make it worthwhile, because Dutch economy really does get going. And in the Fortress Age, they get the Veteran Skirmisher upgrade absolutely free. As you can see, these are regular skirmishers. They'll get the Veteran as soon as they hit Fortress. And then they have access to Reuters, which are really good anti-cavalry and complement skirmishers really, really well. But, yeah, the Dutch player, sorry, the French player, though, he's chosen to go Musketeer and Hussar, which is by no means a bad unit combination. It's just, here he is coming in for that critical mass, and he's going to arrive at this player's base with a large amount of units, and honestly, I'm just going to call him out and say this, that Darwin is playing French very much like Russia, when perhaps he ought not to be. But, yeah, it's not... Anyway, these units, Musketeers and Hussars, are good against what Dutch can make in the colonial age, which is, of course, skirmishers, and their main anti-cavalry unit is pikemen. And Dutch don't really want to be making a lot of pikemen, and really the only pikemen they'll ever train are the ones... Well, they don't even train them, they just get the ones from the shipment, the 8 pikemen shipment to defend themselves. So they rarely ever push out, and they don't have very much anti-cavalry, and of course pikemen cost the same resources as banks. So, you know... Anyway, we'll talk about that in a moment. Here we actually see a fight, guys, so let's focus on this. Here, the skirmishers have been doing quite a lot of damage to these musketeers, and he's losing them quite quickly underneath the town centre fire, and, you know, just random skirmisher shots. And those those pikemen are really stopping the cavalry from getting towards the skirmishers, and I think actually Red had a stronger army than Blue. But due to unit positioning and the way that Blue has built his base, he was able to stop the Hussars from getting into the skirmishers and doing any damage, meaning that, you know, those musketeers are just dwindling down to nothing. And now that those 9 Reuters have arrived, in combination, I mean, yes, the musketeers have been focusing down those pikemen and, well, leaving a pathway for the cavalry to actually get to the skirmishers. But just as he managed to neutralise enough pikemen to get to the skirmishers, these Reuters pop out. And as you can see, that really powerful French army that he'd been, you know, reaching that critical mass for, of course, invested, I believe, in the economy early on with the 700 wood, followed up, I would imagine, by 4 Carrera de Bois, which, you know, the settlers will confirm that in a moment. And then we saw 8 crossbowmen being shipped, and that was, you know, when they arrived, he would push out. That critical mass just being easily repelled by the Dutch army here. Anyway. I was saying, I mean, the game is by no means over, because their economies at this point in the game will be very similar, and as you can see, Blue does have some units on the board, but I believe, yeah, well, actually, Moltke now up to the Fortress Age as well, just hit up, actually, clearly gone with the Exiled Prince for the fast age up option, since, of course, there is no resources on the floor there, there's no actual age up bonus, but, yeah, their economies will be fairly even. And there is a slight score gap, but yeah, anyway, I do think the Dutch player has a slight, well, advantage, whether it be slight or not is remains to be seen. But all coming in here to kill some settlers, that's not too good. Moltke really, he needs to get back into, he's fighting an uphill battle. We know this, we saw him lose a lot of units, and losing some settlers really isn't going to help him out either. Anyway, the French colonial, musketeers and hussars are, as I was saying, quite good against what the Dutch can do, because, you know, skirmishers, yes, they're really strong against musketeers. They have that ×2 multiplier, and yes, pikemen are really good against hussars with that ×5 multiplier. Here, by the way, Red coming in with these cuirassiers to slow down these skirmishers here so he can get these units into hand combat. But I do actually think Dutch has enough dragoons, certainly more being added in, and yeah, he's got some units in his base. If these were with the rest of his army, then I believe he could actually engage this here and that wouldn't be a problem for him. But since his units aren't all in one place, he's going to have to retreat there since, well, you know, that first shipment has arrived for the French player, and you know, there are a couple of units that he'd been training in the colonial age as well. But yeah, skirmishers good against musks, pikemen good against cavalry. So you're thinking interjection, surely skirmisher pikeman is better against musketeer hussar. And it's, well, yeah, musketeers though, yes, they're weak to skirmishers, but they actually have a 23 range damage, which they do to skirmishers as well. Whereas a skirmisher can't actually do very good damage against a hussar. It's times 0.8, and you have to remember hussars have a 30% ranged resist as well, so it's reduced even further. And pikemen, they die to musketeer shots quite quickly. You don't really end up training very many because you can't afford to as Dutch. You want to be saving your food and wood for banks, and if you're going to be collecting food and wood with your settlers, you're just going to slow your age up down. So actually, the French colonial is very good against the Dutch colonial, I would say. But on the other hand, Dutch isn't going to stay colonial. As we can see here, Umeu is now in the Fortress Age, and he has a much stronger unit combination. No more pikemen here, actually training veteran Reuters, which are, you know, costing food and primarily coin. And, you know, you have lots of banks there. Your main resource really is coin coming in. And skirmishers are quite a coin-heavy unit as well. I think a lot of the Dutch units are coin-heavy. But, you know, the point is, skirmishers are definitely much better alongside Reuters, because Reuters, they don't have to get up close to deal damage to a cavalry unit, and they do crazy damage to a cavalry unit. They have a ×3 multiplier, so, you know, musketeers will get eaten alive by skirmishers, and hussars just get eaten alive by Reuters there. So the French colonial really isn't that strong once the Dutch player gets to the Fortress Age, as has happened here. Now, I was expecting the Dutch player to have a stronger advantage by this point and to have pushed in, but hasn't done so, and that's because he's clearly spent 1,500 resources on falconets here, which, very, very strong unit, but has delayed his push here, and this could be very interesting indeed. I think, actually, Umeu getting a little caught off guard as these cuirassiers come in. They're going to do crazy damage against those, well, anything that's close and bunched up, like all of these Reuters, and yes, Reuters counter cavalry. They're bunched up close to the cannons to try and protect them, but cuirassiers have massive area damage. They're just going to tear through everything, and cuirassiers have a lot of hit points as well. They're going to very easily bring down those cannons, since they're going to be able to take quite punishment from the Reuters. And these skirmishers here, yeah, trying to focus down the things killing his cannons, and it's not very efficient to target cavalry with skirmishers here. And now that the cannons have gone, that was, well, losing. But then again, you have to remember, I suppose, cuirassiers cost 300 resources each. A falconet's 500. You know, it's not actually too much difference when you think about the sheer amount of cuirassiers that just went down there. And whilst it looked really bad that he lost the cannons, at the same time, you know, the French player losing so many of those expensive cavalry, I think it was a fair trade. And as you can see here, now just a skirmisher on skirmisher fight. Doesn't perhaps want to get the Reuters too involved, because he knows that the red player will focus down those Reuters, meaning that there wouldn't be enough anti-cavalry to adequately protect these skirmishers here. But we see the 12 Swiss pikemen shipment just arriving from the Dutch player here, now sending the Finnish hackapels as well, setting up some win conditions with these, of course, mercenaries. And you know, those cannons were really the only thing giving this Dutch player the siege potential he needed to carry into his opponent's base and start removing those military buildings and just buildings generally. Because, of course, skirmishers and Reuters have very low siege, whereas these pikemen don't. They have very high siege, so there's that. So they're also very good against cavalry, such as the cuirassiers that this French player has been training. And there's that. So, yeah. Anyway, let's just get back to the French discussion here. I was saying that the French colonial, not so good against the Dutch fortress, and, you know, I think actually the French fortress, if the French player had gone for a semi-fast fortress all along, he would have been in a much stronger spot, and that is because, well, you know, Dutch spend a lot of resources. They invest a lot into their economy for those banks. There's a huge amount of resources they're actually spending on banks, and then they go up to the Fortress Age and they make use of that. It's about the equivalent of a 35 settler economy. But if we take a look at the French semi-fast fortress, they can achieve about the same with regards to the amount of settler equivalent they have, just from the market upgrades and that 4 Carrera de Bois shipment. So, you know, the French semi-fast fortress is almost as strong economically as the Dutch one, and here we see this player now coming in, going for the all-in with, of course, those Swiss pikemen, and the cuirassiers here are not going to be able to protect his skirmishes there. Of course, there are a bunch of hussars killing off his skirmishers, and he was trying to use his own cavalry to protect his skirmishers there, but these Swiss pikemen getting too close to the skirmishers and forcing those cuirassiers to run away, since, you know, these things do 22 times 5 versus cavalry. Absolutely ridiculous. But in the first place, Red really didn't want to be using his cuirassiers to protect his skirmishers from hussars. He much would have rather used the cuirassiers, and he had a decent amount of them to kill off his opponent's skirmishers here. And there's absolutely no way he's going to do it now, since these pikemen, he's put them in stagger mode over here so they take less damage from ranged attacks, and they'll be easily able to just bring down anything that's opposing the skirmishers, and can protect them really, really well. And now those Hackapel have arrived as well. Where are they? Absolutely crazy units. Really, really, really strong here with 121 hand damage. These are just going to tear through these poor settlers here really, really quick. You see that boom, to just two smacks and he's dead from this sword. But overall, not entirely convinced Hackapel are a good unit. They're strong with regards to their hand attack, but very easily focused down. And one of the first ideas behind micromanaging, I suppose, is to focus down the units which have the highest damage output. That's why you often see cannons being removed really, really quickly. And these have such high damage output, really, really low hit points relative to their attack damage, so very easy to just focus down. And unlike the Mameluke, which had thousands of hit points and a low hand attack, but it's not even low, a Mameluke's hand damage. It's just more. It's slightly more than a hussar. So you can by no means say that that is low. Anyway, I think, yeah, the French player would have stood a much better chance if he'd gone for a semi-fast fortress agenda, because he could have had those 5 hussars out like he did, do some raiding, and perhaps remove some of the Dutch settlers. And he'd be able to go up, of course, to the Fortress Age with his 4 Carrera de Bois shipment, you know, like 30% upgrade to hunting on his Carreras. It literally is almost the same as the Dutch economy. And as you can see here, coming in, he has some really nice unit positioning here. Those cuirassiers around the skirmishers, taking them out quite nicely. And his skirmishers focusing down those Reuters quite nicely, but just doesn't have enough units to continue that fight. And I think Umeu could have just taken his hands off the keyboard and the mouse and gone, yeah, bro, I'll just let my units do it for me. And could have won this fight that we're looking at here, especially with Hackapels and nothing to remove them. But thank you very much for watching, everybody. My name has been Interjection, and I will see you next time.